The 18 Strong Podcast, episode number 140 with Tony Soaib, strength coach and nutrition specialist.
In order to adjust a diet as time goes on, you have to have some kind of tracking in terms of amount of food.
Welcome to the 18 Strong Podcast, where you get direct access to the world's greatest experts on training harder, practicing smarter, and playing better golf. Now, here's your host, Jeff Pellizzero.
Hey, welcome to the 18 Strong Podcast, where it's our mission to help you play better golf by becoming physically and mentally stronger, both on and off the course. And this week, we are talking all about nutrition with my good friend and colleague, a guy that I see and work with on a daily basis, Tony Soaib. To preface, Tony is probably the guy that has taught me the most about strength and conditioning, as well as nutrition, more so than any other individual on the planet. So my background is physical therapy, went to school in Kansas City, worked in the clinic, and then kind of worked my way into the fitness realm, working with golfers. But over the past, I'd say 5 years, I've learned more from this guy than any other single person, face-to-face, than anyone I could possibly even think of. Odds are you probably haven't heard Tony's name before, because he is basically one of the lowest key, most humble, and least self-promoting guys I've ever met in the fitness industry. He writes for major publications. He's worked with athletes at the highest level, National Hockey League, Major League Baseball. He has done presentations for national conferences all over the United States. But he's not a guy that has a fitness blog and is traveling around doing a bunch of presentations, has a big YouTube channel or anything like that. So I wanted to bring Tony on to share some of the knowledge that he has. And to be honest, he's one of the smartest guys I've ever met, especially in regards to program design, nutrition, and anything strength training and conditioning related. Have you ever met somebody that can just read something and retain it, and you kind of hate them for it? Because I don't know about you, but I'm not a person that just reads something and has it in my brain. I have to study it. I have to do it over and over. I have to practice it, fail at it. Tony's just one of those guys that can read and read very, very quickly and then retain a lot of information and then is able to implement immediately. What I also love about his style is that he's pretty much a no BS kind of guy, and he's a straight shooter, and he'll tell you exactly what you need to hear, maybe not always what you want to hear. I think that many times for the fitness professionals listening, the medical professionals, we tend to coddle our clients a little bit, and then as clients or as people looking to get better golfers in the fitness world, we tend to want to be coddled a little bit, and we have our excuses of why we're not doing things. That stuff doesn't necessarily fly in Tony's world, and that's why I love working with him. He's such a great friend to have, such a great accountability partner to have, and in so many ways has been a mentor to me, even though he likes to constantly remind me that I'm much, much older than him. But he has such great knowledge that I wanted to bring him on for the purpose of nutrition for this talk. And we're going to talk about basically a 4-step process that he uses to get results with his clients. And we're going to break it down into these 4 different levels and kind of show you what the most important pieces are and how you can go step by step into these, depending on whether it's even necessary for you to go through all 4 of these steps to reach your nutrition, your fitness, your fat loss goal, whatever that might be. So we're going to break all of this stuff down and give some practical application on how to really do this. Should you be counting calories? Shouldn't you? Should you be looking at your macronutrients? Those kinds of things. How much does the quality of the food that you're eating play a role in what you're doing? This is a very educational episode, so I will have some notes written out regarding the 4-step process and some of the things that Tony talks about in this episode. Before we get to the conversation with Tony, I do want to say thanks to Scratch TV, which is our sponsor for this week's episode. If you haven't heard of Scratch yet, they're a digital platform for a golf-hungry community of creators, celebrities, pro athletes, and fans that delivers custom content in a voice that's basically kind of honed for the age of social networks. So Scratch features daily golf videos that are comprised of both original and curated programming, stuff from the PGA Tour like highlights, as well as special production from certain events, special events like the Players Championship and some of the other tournaments. I love their tagline. It's that it's just golf. Try not to make it so seriously. What they're doing is they're taking the light side of golf, they're having some fun with it, and they're highlighting it and creating some social content around it. So if you haven't checked out Scratch TV, just go to scratchtv.com, and you can follow them on all the social media platforms as well. All right, I want to get into the episode with Tony. I know there's a lot of great information in here and a lot of actionable advice that you can take with you. The biggest thing that I want you to get out of this is first that we talk about the quality of the food that you're putting in your body, and then it's all about commitment after that. And then you can kind of go through this 4-step process depending on where you fall in line there. All right, enjoy this episode. My man, Tony Soaib, welcome to the show. Finally,
thanks for having me.
You got it, buddy. Considering I kind of drug you on the show this time to share with the rest of the 18 Strong community the guy that I lean on probably most on a daily basis, really. Now that you and I are working together again and see each other about 4 times a week, and you're probably tired of answering all my questions and me peppering you as soon as you walk in the door. But
never.
I know I want to give the audience a little bit of background on you. You're strength coach, nutrition specialist. You played college baseball. You've worked with pro athletes, hockey players, baseball players, including quite a few of the more well-known Cardinals that people might know. If I can drop names, I'm going to say them. Matt Holliday and a couple other guys. You've presented at national conferences. You write for major publications. But it's almost like pulling teeth to get you to do some of this stuff on social media. So I had to drag you on to share your knowledge with the world. So I know that it took a little coercing to get you here, but thanks for coming on.
Definitely out of the comfort zone, but we're going to give it a shot.
That's how we grow here, buddy. We grow by getting ourselves out of the comfort zone. All right, so you and I'm constantly, literally asking you questions about nutrition. I've shared with people on the show, and I've shared in a lot of the posts and things in our private group that, there are many questions that I ask you about. Actually, in the book, if you guys read the Golfer's Guide to a Bogey-Proof Workout, there's a section in there where I talk about nutrition, I talk about fat loss, and I talk about me going through a period where I really ended up leaning out, and Tony's the guy that kind of helped me with my program design and with the eating. And so I thought it'd be great to bring you on and talk about a lot of these different things. But one of our goals here is to kind of simplify how we look at nutrition, how we can kind of wrap our heads around everything that is out there. Because as you and I both know, there's so much nutrition information out there. So first, how would you encourage somebody to go about just kind of grasping the nutritional palette, if you will, when they first see everything that's on the internet?
Well, the first step I like to take is I want everyone to do the things they already know they should be doing. So the easy things, fruits, vegetables, lean protein. That's really the biggest thing. Sometimes people don't even need to go beyond that. It's a huge first step, and we all know it. There's no skipping steps. There's no really details beyond that if you're not already doing it. So I would say keep it as simple as possible. If you're not doing those things, start. You already know you should be doing it. Start implementing it today. Yeah,
there was a while back where we had some Facebook conversations going on in one of our groups, and you put together a great post that I'll put on the show notes that really labeled out these things. And you said that you kind of go by a 4-step plan almost. And just to name out the steps, first, like you just said, is going with the things that they know, the types of foods. The second was going with the amount of foods. The third is then looking into the actual macro ratios and things like that. And then the fourth is the timing and the cycling. So let's kind of break these down individually a little bit. So the first one, like you just mentioned, is the things that we all know. And we can't skip that step. I find that so many people want the magic bullet. They want to find the secret sauce. They want to find whatever specific hot fad diet is going to work the best. But, I mean, deep down, we all know there's certain things we gotta look at. And there's certain foods we got to be eating. And so how do you first address that with somebody when they come in and they're like, I want to do this, or I want to try this, or when they come in and start peppering you with those kind of questions?
Yeah, I mean, I'm guilty too. I love every fat loss and dieting book ever written. I love them all. I read them all. They all bring something to the table, but for the person that's starting out, like I said, do the things that all of the diets have in common, which is, again, fruits and vegetables, lean proteins, nuts, seeds, things like that. Like I said, we all know it, but that's the first step. Don't go on to my fourth step, which is timing and cycling, before you've had your first bite of broccoli or your first chicken breast.
All right, let's talk about that for a second, because I have so many guys that are like, but I don't really like vegetables. So what else can I do? What does Tony Soaib say there? Because I know Tony's a pretty black and white, straight shooting guy. What does Tony Soaib say in that situation?
You don't have to like it. That's okay. You just have to do it.
Right.
I mean, it just has to be a part of the routine. You brush your teeth every day. You drive your car every day. I mean, you go to work every day. You don't always like it. You just do it. It has to be part of the routine. And the other thing I tell people a lot is when they're making diet changes, it's not like every meal on a daily basis is some gourmet feast that, it's going to be so hard to give up. Corn flakes aren't that great. It's not like you're going to miss it that much. Just sub it out with something else that's just okay too. I mean, it's not that big a deal.
Yeah, I think we kind of get caught up in some of that stuff. And
yeah, the turkey sandwich at lunch. I mean, it's not that great. You can just ditch the bread and put in some spinach. I mean, it's pretty easy.
What is it you always tell me? Either in or out. You're either in or out.
Yeah, you're in or out. Just make each meal pass, fail. I mean, that's the question you get all the time nutritionally is, should I have this or that? Like, one thing's better than the other. Well, if every meal is on the pass-fail system, I mean, a Snickers bar is a fail. Chicken and broccoli is a pass. So if you look at each meal individually, that's all it is. Don't start asking what's better, this or that. Then you can just go down a rabbit hole and keep asking questions when you should just be acting.
So speaking of the types of foods, there's so many different ways. Well, maybe this is something to get into in step number 3, the macro ratios. But there's so many different, quote unquote styles of eating or different diets, the paleo diet, the low carb diet, high carb diet, high fat diet. So is this where you would even mention that stuff in the type of food category here, or is that something to look at a little further down the line?
Yeah, if somebody has a dieting style that they like, or certain types of food they like that they don't want to give up, yeah, you can definitely start with one of those approaches as kind of a guideline. So if you love steak and eggs, don't try and adopt a high carb, low fat diet. Just go with the high fat, lower carb diet. You don't have to hate the dieting style you use, or everyone has a preference in terms of the foods they like to eat. So include those as much as you can while getting the results you want. Not saying you're going to enjoy every single meal you eat, but you can definitely lean towards the things you do enjoy.
And so is the stumbling block there that people don't necessarily stick to that? They tend to kind of mesh what they want to mesh in on those different plans?
Yeah, for sure. That's if somebody has read multiple dieting books or has scoured the internet a little bit, you can get mixed messages, and the worst thing you can do is combine them, because you're going to take competing aspects from different diets that don't work together. So if you're looking around the internet for a diet style right now, just pick one. Just pick the one that you think will be the easiest or most enjoyable for you, and just do it. Don't mix them. That's the worst approach.
I want to continue on the path of these 4 steps, but then towards the end of the interview, we'll kind of talk about, maybe what you've seen the most success with kind of this population and the golfers and just general people that we work with. But let's talk about the amount of food, because I know that this is always a big component and a big question for people is, should I be counting calories? How do I adjust or know how much food I should be eating on a regular basis? So where do we start with that?
Probably meal frequency And the thing with meal frequency is, again, you're going to get mixed messages from different people. There's the 3 meals a day. There's the 5 or 6 meals a day that were popularized by the bodybuilding community, or now intermittent fasting's popular, where you don't eat from the night before until lunch the next day. So again, you can make any of those work for you. So pick one. If you want to eat 3 meals a day, start there. Then you can move on to what the contents of each meal are going to be. So in order to adjust a diet as time goes on, you have to have some kind of tracking in terms of amount of food. So whether it's calories, which is my preferred method, it's very easy and clean to adjust. Or if you're going to go with the eyeball system, you use the palm of your hand as a guide for how much protein to eat, or a visual of a plate as kind of like a chart for what your plate should look like at each meal. There needs to be some kind of tracking in the amount of food in case you do need to adjust down the line, whether you want to gain weight, lose weight, what have you. Because if you're not tracking, how are you going to adjust? You have to know what you're doing first before you can make adjustments to it.
And this doesn't mean that you always have to sit down and count out your calories every single meal, package it in a little Ziploc thing. For some people, and correct me if I'm wrong here, I mean, most of us need to just kind of simplify things and just kind of take a little bit of control over what we're eating so we have an idea of what's going on. So would you say that maybe at the beginning, be pretty strict and count and track and whatever, but then you get an idea of what you're actually eating on a daily basis? Because I think some people have no idea whether they're eating, 800 calories or whether they're eating 3,200 calories in a day.
Yeah, most people have no clue. And if they were to guess, it's almost always the case that people underestimate how much they're eating. Because once you actually look at what a serving size is on a label, or how many ounces of meat you're actually eating, if you're not thinking about it, you'll underreport what you do eat. But then once you do go to record it, then you have a more firm grasp on what's really happening.
What do you find is one of the easiest ways to track it? Do you have a preferred app that you use, or any kind of a system?
I would say pencil and paper is the best. Once you go through it for a few days, I mean, you're going to have a handle on it. It'll be so quick, like anything. The mathematical calculations are super easy. So anybody listening to the podcast will be able to handle it. Tracking calories, I know everyone acts like it's such a hassle, but I mean, it really only takes about 60 seconds per meal. And like I said, after a few days, it's going to be even less than that. It's not, if you don't have 60 seconds to write it down, I mean, you probably have bigger problems than worrying about calorie counting.
Yeah, you're probably still working on step number 1 then, right?
Exactly.
I know that something that, I don't remember if it was you that suggested this, but a tactic that I used was even just take a picture of everything that you eat, and then, so you don't have to write it down then, but then at the end of the day, you can look that stuff up too. And I know MyFitnessPal is an easy trackable one. It's got almost every, food known to man in that system, and it'll break down the calories and the servings and stuff like that. So there are easy apps out there too, but there's something about, and I had a feeling you'd go pencil and paper just because I know how old school you are. But there's something about writing that stuff out too. It's like anything. Putting pen on paper just makes you kind of feel it and own it a little bit more, I think. What about...
Yeah, for sure. I've had guys use all those methods. Taking the pictures, pencil and paper. Some guys will write what they have. They'll type it into their notes on their phone and then calculate everything at the end of the day. So yeah, you have a bunch of options there. So just pick one and roll with it for a while.
Yeah, and I want to point out to everybody listening that, you basically have worked with and continue to work with the gamut of individuals in the training market. I mean, you work with golfers, you work with, guys in their 40s, 50s, 60s that are businessmen, high-flying CEOs, but you've also worked with baseball players, bodybuilders, fitness models. So you've seen it all. You've worked with all these people, and these are kind of the strategies and tactics that you've used with all of those people, correct?
Yeah, for sure. That's what gives me I don't know if I want to call it an edge, but working with that group of people, you have to be flexible and you have to be able to be familiar with all types of personalities and what dieting styles fit with each. And you have to be able to adapt to the client. So I would say that's definitely an edge for me.
So as we're talking about the amount of food, just to give people a little bit more direction on, how much they should be eating, let's talk about how do they figure out, okay, now they know I'm going to take control of, looking at my calories and stuff like that. But how do they know based on their goal what they should or shouldn't be eating?
With amount of food, I use an easy calculation. If you're using calories, if you want to lose weight, body weight times 12 should be your total calories for a day. Maintenance, body weight times 15. If hypertrophy is the goal, body weight times 18. And those are just guidelines. So if you're in a fat loss phase and you're weighing yourself and you're getting your body fat assessed in one way or another, and you start with body weight times 12, and your skin folds stay the same, your weight staying the same, your body fat's the same, you adjust the calories downwards. And same thing for your other goals. If your goal is maintenance and you're eating body weight times 15 for calories and the scale keeps creeping up, you may have to adjust downwards to 14. So I kind of do it like that for calories. And again, that's why I like the calories method the best for tracking the amount of food a client eats, because it's the cleanest. It's easy to manipulate that. If you're going with the same thing with the eyeball method, or if you're taking pictures, if you're in a hypertrophy phase and half your plate has been vegetables, maybe you need to crank up the portion of your plate that's fats or proteins if you need the scale to move upwards. So like I said, it goes back to tracking the amount of food. You need to stick with your method, and those are like I said, calories is the cleanest one, but start with an easy tracking method and adjust it upwards or downwards based on your goal from week to week.
Yeah, and that's it's a constant adjustment, just like anything else. Like we talk so much about, assessing physically and looking at different movement patterns and what's going on with people's bodies, and based on or even just progressive resistance when you're lifting weights. You get to a certain point, and if you can do 8 reps and your scheme is 6 to 8 reps for that, you bump it up. If you can't do 6 reps, you need to go back a little lighter. So it's kind of the same kind of mentality. What about moving on to the third part? So once you kind of dial in how much you're eating based on, again, a pretty simple calculation. Let's then go into kind of macronutrient ratios. How do you determine who needs what, or where you start to count those things?
The easiest one is just to go with a third. So protein, fat, and carbs, a third of your calories from each of those categories. So if you're somebody who's, again, looked around the internet, you've looked at all these different dieting styles, just start with a third if you can't make a choice. It's the easiest one to adjust. And again, it's very clean. It's not difficult to change that. It's difficult to go from a low fat, high carb approach and then flip flop it and go high fat, low carb. Mm-hmm. But if you're in the middle, it's easier to adjust to one or the other.
So you can kind of scale it up or scale it down depending on which way you're going.
Exactly. And again, it's not that there's anything magical or special about the isocaloric type of diet, like I just described, a third. It's just that It's the easiest, and people don't feel like they're being deprived of anything because everything is evenly distributed.
I want to take a quick second here to give a shout out to our other featured sponsor of today's episode, which is, again, Rad Roller. The Rad Roller products are some of the greatest self-tissue myofascial release products out on the market today. And they've got such a great line of products that are able to be used for every part of your body that you need to work on. So we constantly talk about movement and mobility, and especially this May, where we have our whole platform of Mobility May going on, which you can check out on our Instagram post. And it's all about people creating better movement in their body. And while mobility has to do with you actually moving yourself and creating control and action around that, there's one great way that you can facilitate that, and that's by doing some of the soft tissue techniques that we've learned from our guys over at Rad Roller, using some of these products to help facilitate the tissue to move better, to loosen things up, to work on some of those knots, is one of the greatest ways to then free up a little bit of extra movement where you can then work on that mobility. So if you haven't checked out the Rad Roller products, just go to radroller.com and you can look at their whole suite of products. There's all different styles and shapes of different balls, and the Helix and the Rad Rod. All these tools are meant to be able to travel with lightly and hit every different spot that you need to hit on your body. So again, go to radroller.com. Be sure to use the code 18STRONG and you'll get a discount on any product that you purchase. All right, let's get back to Tony. One thing I want to point out is, because we're talking about calories, and we've had some guests on the show, and we've talked about not counting calories, counting calories. I think first and foremost we have to go back and just remind people that the first step in this whole process, again, was the type of food that you're eating. So when we're looking at calories here, because I think, this conversation gets convoluted a little bit because people think, oh, I just got to count my calories. But no, remember that first and foremost, we were talking about the types of food that are making up these calories. So we're talking about, the healthy proteins,
also, the other thing,
the good fats.
The other thing is you don't have to move on to the next step ever. So if you're at step one, types of food, and you're achieving everything you want to achieve, don't change anything. Don't move on to step two. Just keep doing what you're doing.
That's a great point. Yeah, because
so there's no reason to get into a debate on whether you should or shouldn't count calories, what type of diet is better. It's just look at it black and white. Is this nutritional program doing what I want it to do? Am I achieving what I want to achieve? If the answer is yes, change nothing.
Yeah.
If you're not achieving your goal, you need to make a change.
Absolutely. Great point. All right, so as far as the macronutrients, you start with a third. Then, just for example's sake, what if you're somebody that's, in the post that you had in Facebook, we talked about, okay, then adjusting it, is your goal to gain muscle? Is your goal to lose body fat? So how would you then kind of skew it if the person wanted to gain a little bit of muscle, or on the reverse, if they wanted to lose a little fat?
So for adjusting the macros, I'm going to go up with carbs, down with fats as activity level gets higher. So the more training sessions a person has in a week, the higher the carb content's going to be. And again, if you want to gain muscle mass and you're training 5, 6, 7 times a week, I'm going to adjust the calories and carbs upward, and vice versa for, say, fat loss, not very active. I'm going to adjust carbs downward and get more of my calories from proteins and fats. It's pretty simple.
So let's say we've got a guy who's trying to maybe lose a little bit of fat. He works a job, regular guy, has a family, has kids, maybe works out 2-3 times a week, and probably plays golf once on the weekend. What general idea ratio, where would you kind of put him?
So he's fat loss, trains a few times a week, plays golf on the weekends.
Yeah.
And he has a sedentary job?
Probably more sedentary than anything, at a desk, in the car, in meetings most of the day.
I would start with, and we're going to assume he is steps 1 and 2 are all good.
Right.
Okay, so we start him at a third, body weight times 12 for calories, and he's hit a fat loss plateau. I'm going to keep him at a third protein. I'm going to go up with my fats and down with my carbs. So I'll go, say, 25% carbs. What did that put us at? 45% fat. Just a small adjustment downwards. I may drop the calories down to body weight times 11 if he's been stuck for a while.
Cool. Perfect. All right, and then let's move on to step number 4, which is timing and cycling. And I know that you've stressed to me that very few people even get to this point.
Yeah, most people don't need to get to the point where they're worried about eating a certain type of meal or a certain macronutrient ratio at a specific time of day. But let's say somebody, again, they have a high training frequency. So they're, say, lifting weights in the afternoons, playing golf every morning. So they're up near the double-digit training sessions per week. I'm going to worry more about things like glycogen replenishment after weight training, intra-round and intra-workout nutrients. So basically, I'm going to target more carb consumption around their training sessions and lower carbs outside of the workout when they can use fatty acids for fuel more so than glucose.
Gotcha.
It's just it's a good way to keep guys lean while also, like I said, keeping glycogen stores full for harder, longer, more frequent training sessions.
Now, is this the phase where you would pay more attention to like post-workout shakes and things like that? Or would you introduce those even ahead of this just to make sure that people are getting some of the macros that they need?
Yeah, if a guy, that one I kind of go on an individual basis. If a guy is used to drinking a post-workout shake or something like that, I'll work it in so he doesn't have to alter his routine. But yeah, most people, I'm going to worry more about workout nutrition in that step 4. So if a guy hasn't been having a post-workout drink and his performance is still going the direction I want, I don't worry about adding it in until he's covered those first 3 steps first.
Gotcha. All right. So I know that you get barraged with questions, on a daily basis from me, from clients, and everybody's got kind of similar questions that they ask, but sometimes I find that they're not always asking the right questions, or the questions that you might think are most important. So what are some of the questions that people should be asking but aren't asking when it comes to their nutrition?
How can I make this easier? That's probably the biggest one. So again, it goes back to that first step, doing what you're supposed to do. A way you can really make it easy on yourself is preparing meals in advance. So whether that's you cooking them once or twice a week, or hiring a meal service, or getting in the routine of eating the same things day after day. I mean, that's one a lot of successful dieters and guys who've stayed lean and in shape for a long time, they typically eat the same foods day after day. You have to develop your routine. Like I said, whether that's preparing them yourselves, getting out the Tupperware on Sunday or what have you, or having a meal service, you need to make it easy and as simple as possible.
Yeah, I think those meal services have come so far, and I mean, they're not quite as expensive as I once thought that they would be. And so I see a lot of people that are utilizing those and making the most of them, because it kind of takes the prep and planning out of your hands, and it's just like, okay, it's here. It's kind of a preemptive strike on you eating bad because they just deliver to your door and you eat it. So if you guys haven't checked out, some of the meal plans in your area, the delivery services, that's definitely a way to go. Just experience-wise, Tone, with so many guys, let's say in this demographic, kind of that guy that's working a full job, has kids, and is trying to play golf, trying to work out a few times a week. When you come across that population, what has what are some of the tips, or I hate to say tips and tricks, but what are some of the things that have seemed to work the most? I know that, and I kind of fall into this category. You know, you and I, I think it was 2 years ago, when I was going through kind of a transformation of my house and was kind of on a poor training schedule, and I had you unfortunately pinch me with the body calipers, which we just did again a couple days ago, and it was basically like, okay, I got to get back on track, and I had you put me on a program. And what are some of the things that you shared with me and that seemed to be kind of our go-to? I would say our now, because I lean on you so much with this. But what are the go-to things to kind of get people on the fast track to get quick results?
The first one is get some kind of assessment. So I would say the most common goal is people want to lose fat. So if you're not tracking something, you're not going to be able to make adjustments. So the first thing is whether you get a body fat test with calipers, a bod pod, water or air displacement, use the scale, tape measure. You have to be measuring something. So get your testing in order, get that done. Then you have to pick an approach. That's the biggest thing. You can't be wishy-washy on your plan. You have to develop the plan. So you have to develop the plan, then take the first step of the plan, whether it's the ones you and I just talked about, or they picked up a dieting book and they're just going to follow that. You have to take the first step. So I would say really the next step is to stop asking questions and just get after it and make adjustments as you go if needed. The guys that have lost the most fat and have had the most success dieting with me, they get their body fat test and then they go. They don't wait for a specific day. They don't wait for Monday. They don't wait till after the birthday party or the holiday. They get the body fat test, then the diet starts. They just dive right in.
Well, and I think that's the thing that I learned the most from you, because, you know, being buddies, being in the same place, we can give each other some trouble in a friendly manner, but, you know, kind of really poking the bear and saying like, hey, you said you were going to do this. Are you going to do it or not? And what I love about you is there's no judgment either way. It's like either yes, you are, yes, you aren't. I'm cool with either way, but if you say you're going to do it, do it. And so that was the first time I think that I ever, you know, hit it that hard. And I mean, we saw the results. I think in a 3-month period, it was like a 10% drop in body fat. It was the first time I'd ever been that lean. And it was because I did exactly what you just said. It was, you know, you drew the line in the sand, and it was either step on this side or that side. You're either all in or you're all out, right?
Exactly. That's a good one you just mentioned there too. Have a deadline. So, have something to hold you accountable, whether it's, okay, we're going to go all out on fat loss for the next 2 months, or I'm going to get my body fat checked every 2 weeks for the next 12 weeks, whatever it may be. Again, you took those initial measurements, set a deadline and set a goal, and keep constantly, make sure you're taking the steps to reach that goal. Like, whether it's making a bet with a buddy, or like you said, a friend that will playfully berate you a little bit. Any of those will work. Yeah. But yeah, set a deadline and a goal, and go for it. If you're going to go, just go all in.
Yeah, having that weekly, I think we checked my body fat on a weekly basis, and that was more, it wasn't because we had to, it was more just that accountability, like, okay, let's see, did you do what you said you were going to do this week? And I know that we're talking about fat loss here, but this goes for anything, whatever your goal is, nutrition-wise, fitness-wise, strength-wise, golf-wise, you know, have that accountability partner or have something in place where you can kind of check in on a regular basis and see, okay, did I do what I said I was going to do or not? So I wanted to just jump in before we ask a couple of the last few regular questions here on the show. You and I, as we're goofing around in the gym, we've always got some boiling point topics that we just kind of talk about that, you know, we hear people saying these things, and you and I will start jokingly talking about how either they're true or not true, or our opinions on them. And so we were talking I think earlier this week on how so many people say that they just haven't found the thing that works for them yet. So give me your take on the what works for me, or I haven't found what works for me yet.
Yeah, that one, that one gets me fired up. What works for you? I'm not a fan of that statement, because it's kind of like, oh, there's this secret approach or this secret diet out there, and I just haven't found it yet. Well, no, I mean, you can, and if we're taking outliers out of it, I know there's always exceptions, but almost any diet will work if you do the work. So if you follow the majority of the mainstream diets to a T, you're probably going to come close to the expected result. Like I said earlier, if you've had your gallbladder removed and you can't process fats like someone else would, don't choose the Atkins diet. That's not smart. So what works for you? Yeah, it's not my favorite. Stick with start an approach and actually follow the rules for a while. Give it a month or two, and then if you're not getting the results, make an adjustment. But hopping from one diet to the next, thinking one's going to be magical, that's not my favorite approach.
Yeah, again, it's pick it and run with it. All right, what about so many times I've heard, and we actually heard this not long ago, somebody is kind of in a fat loss phase of their program, and that's their main goal. And they're looking at the scale, and they said something like, "Well, I haven't lost much weight, but I'm probably gaining as much muscle as I've lost fat, so it's probably evened itself out." What do you think about that?
There are times when you can rapidly gain muscle mass and lose fat at the same time, but it's pretty rare. So somebody, say a teenage boy, starts weight training for the first time and he was kind of pudgy to start. Yeah, he'll probably gain some muscle mass and lose fat at the same time if he starts training and dieting all at once for the first time in his life. Or say take an off-season professional athlete. So these guys have been on the road, high stress, low weight training volume for several months. They've been eating not the best because of all the travel and stress. If they start dieting and the weight training frequency gets bumped up, yeah, they're going to rapidly lose fat and gain muscle mass at the same time, or regain muscle mass, which is even easier. But for Joe Blow, I mean, it's pretty rare to see muscle mass gain and fat loss at the same time. So if you're in a fat loss diet and the scale is creeping up, it's pretty rare you should credit that to muscle mass gain. You might want to adjust your calories or limit your food intake in some way or another.
Yeah, so practically that's again a sign that says something's not dialed in yet. So, you can't just say, okay, well, I'll keep doing the same thing because I'm probably gaining muscle. It's no, something's not working. We gotta figure that out. And one of the funniest things I ever saw in the gym was when I think you were working with our buddy Dave doing his fat loss or his calipers and stuff. Dave, who by the way generally walks around at about 6 to 11% body fat, and he said something like, I feel like I'm this, and you just looked and said, calipers don't feel, calipers show numbers. So let's do the testing.
Yeah. Feelings, going by feel is rarely the answer if you're after a hardcore body fat loss. I mean, I guess I'm sure somebody's done it, but the numbers don't lie. So if you have those, go with those versus what you're feeling at the moment.
Yeah, the numbers don't lie. Measure, don't guess is a common phrase around here. All right,
For sure.
One last thing I wanted to talk about was just eating, what should people be eating on the golf course? Because sometimes you see guys eating like hoagie sandwiches out there, and breaking out a bag of trail mix. And what should a golfer actually be eating on the golf course?
Anything that's easy, portable. It should be quick. It should be simple. So it shouldn't take them away from the game, and it shouldn't be something that's very heavy. I would stick with simple things, nuts, seeds, Epic bars, protein bars, something along those lines. It should be something you can eat from one hole to the next. You should be done with it and back to the game. You shouldn't be focusing on the food during the round.
And do we need much out there? I mean, I know that we're walking for, it could be 4 to 6 hours depending on a round of golf. But, I mean, how much food does a person actually need versus how much caloric expenditure they have and, energy levels and things like that?
Yeah, golf is it's a pretty passive game. It can take a while, so you're probably going to want to have one of those snacks in there. But, again, it's not going to bump up your calorie needs very much higher than a typical day. Again, it's just some walking, so don't go scarfing down, like you said, hoagie sandwiches because you're doing a little more activity than usual. It's really, like I said, it's not a rugby game or an overtime hockey game where your calorie needs are super high. So keep it quick and simple and get back to the game.
Perfect. All right, man, let's just finish up with a couple quick questions here. These are coming. Are you more of a Caddyshack or Happy Gilmore guy?
Happy Gilmore for sure. Caddyshack was before my time.
That's right. You're a youngster. And just for the record, obviously Happy Gilmore would be your choice, being a collegiate baseball player. But I have, for everybody out there listening, I have officially clocked Tony with a driver in the gym at, I think it was 147 miles an hour. So just to give you an idea of the swing speed that this guy has. Now, I've also seen him at the driving range, and it did not correlate exactly with distance. No, just had to throw that
every once in a while.
Every once in a while. Everyone, great scramble partner, this guy. All right. If golf was like baseball, where you're walking up to the tee box, you've got a song playing in the background. What's your song?
I would say "You Can't Stop Me." "You Can't Stop Me Now" by Bobby Digital.
Ooh. I don't know. I'd have to hear that to recognize that tone. You sure it's not an Ellie Goulding song?
Though that would be a good choice too. But no, you're going to have to Google Bobby Digital. "You Can't Stop Me Now."
Will do. All right. If you had a chance to play 18 holes of golf with anyone in the history of the world, who would it be and where would you play?
It would be Genghis Khan, Ben Franklin, and Jose Canseco at the Wynn Golf Club in Vegas.
Oh, man. Just throwing Canseco in there just makes that an interesting
wild card
right there. Wild card, exactly.
He's the wild card.
Exactly. Any particular reason why those three guys?
Oh, my God. Can you imagine? Where would you start?
Good point. Probably at the craps table, I'm guessing.
Probably.
All right, man. Just to wrap it up here, I want to say thanks for coming on. I know that this was not something that you necessarily like to do, get out in the public eye, but I wanted to share with everybody, one of the resources that I really do lean on. And so not to get too sappy on you here, but you've definitely made a huge impact on my career in the fitness world and just being able to pick your brain and those kind of things. So I definitely appreciate all the help, and a lot of the nutrition stuff and a lot of the content that comes through 18 Strong is in some way influenced by Tony. So hopefully you guys appreciate all of his knowledge and everything. So any one last piece of advice for the audience here before we cut off?
Pick something and execute.
Perfect. All right, man, I know that you don't really have too many social media platforms. Well, you do, but not too many active social media platforms for me to tell people to go check you out because you're kind of a man of mystery, honestly. So we'll
a little bit.
We'll keep them guessing, but I'm going to keep dragging you out in some form in the 18 Strong community as you've been so kind to oblige. So thanks again, brother.
Thanks for having me.
You got it. All right, guys, I want to thank you for joining me on this week's episode. Again, if you want any of the information that we talked about, just go to 18strong.com, look up episode number 140, where I'll have a bunch of notes from everything that we talked about in this show, and we'll have some of the things broken down so it's a little easier to digest. We talked about some different numbers and calculations and things like that. So we'll have all of that in the show notes. Again, I want to thank our sponsors for this week's episode, Scratch TV and Rad Roller. Go check both of them out on their respective websites. And if you're not a part of the conversation over on Facebook, please come and join us over in the 18 Strong Movement Facebook group. Just ask to be approved to join, and you can jump right in the conversation, ask any questions. We love when you post pictures. We love seeing what our community is doing and how different people are not only working to get better at their golf game, but how they're helping other people to get better, and simply how you're enjoying your time, either working out, playing golf, whatever it is you're doing. We love to connect, and we're creating a pretty cool, unique community over there where people are even meeting up with each other and playing golf in different cities and stuff like that. So come and join us, 18 Strong, the 18 Strong Movement over on Facebook. We'll catch up again with you next week with another great guest. Train hard, practice smart, and play better golf.
Thanks for listening to the 18 Strong podcast at www.18strong.com. And remember, train hard, practice smart, and play better golf.